Good afternoon, everyone. Forgive me for my voice. Apparently screaming all grad night does not help. And you're going to give a speech. 3 years ago, I sat in the same room and saw my sister give a speech on this podium when she graduated. I've watched these graduations my entire life. I've known the school my entire life. The school is practically as old as I am. I was first on stage with Pacifica when I was 4. I won a retreat trophy when I was 8. And now I stand up here at 18, ready to leave a place I've prepared my entire life to go to. Yet, after 4 surprisingly short, yet calamitous years, we are done. We have finished. One of my favorite subjects in school is Latin. Everyone who knows me knows that. When people hear this, I inevitably get asked 2 questions. The first is, why on earth would you take Latin? And the second, my favorite, is, don't you know Latin is a dead language? That one always cracks me up because it assumes I think the Roman Empire is still around. Yeah, in my first 2 years of taking Latin, I asked myself those questions because Latin was learned as a dead language. A language that only exists on the page, only meant to be dissected and translated. Our experience changed with the arrival of Mrs. Scobie, who taught Latin is not merely learned, but lived. Et nunc scio Latine lingua vivit, pulcherque et aeternam. Magister Latine davita ob meum. Gratias. To translate, and now I know Latin is a living, beautiful, and eternal language. Thank you, Mrs. Scobie, for giving Latin life. That is something that every senior and student at Pacifica has in common. All of us have had a teacher bring a subject to life. But the subject we have focused on the most is life itself. We have been taught on numerous occasions to build lives, not just resumes, and to live lives rooted in community. I love you, Mr. Knight. The key to a full, abundant life, once again, lies in Latin. Gratia et veritas, or grace and truth. As we gather this last time together, let's look at these 2 key parts of life again. Grace is the first key element to an abundant life. Grace is the offering and persevering in love towards those that oppose us. The opposition could be from people who have intentionally wronged us or made mistakes that have hurt us. Grace is like a gift we don't deserve. Grace is significant because first, it is through grace and grace alone that we receive the blessings of God. Second, grace gives us the eyes to see ourselves properly. And finally, grace makes it possible for us to persevere in a community together. Through our theology classes at Pacifica, we've seen in the writings of St. Augustine of Hippo how much his life changed when he accepted God's grace. Before grace, Augustine was locked in a prison of his past sins, wallowing in feelings of guilt and self-hatred. After grace, he was freed from that prison to a life of peace, love, wisdom, and the knowledge that his life is not defined by his sins, but by the grace that God gave him. He saw himself with new and clear eyes. We have experienced grace too. From freshmen who ranged from too shy to speak to having absolutely no filter in what they would share, to seniors who are able to have discussions on controversial or trivial topics with respect for one another's differing opinions and beliefs. Our class has grown together in grace. This should mark us as Pacificans and be the foundation of our new lives. What we have learned and experienced at Pacifica is countercultural. When it comes to disagreeing about fundamental things, grace is out of fashion in our culture. Differences in beliefs are met with rage. Unpopular opinions are bullied into silence. Many people are too afraid to say anything of substance at all. When the smallest bit of opposition becomes extreme, we plug our ears and retreat to our own echo chambers. It's almost like the class of 2022 is being asked, why on earth would you show grace? The second element of an abundant life is truth. Truth is that which correctly corresponds with reality. We've learned that there are two types of truth, that which is subjective and that which is objective. Nobody argues against the existence of subjective truth, as we all have our own opinions and beliefs. Yet, in our postmodern world, the idea of objective truth seems to be dying. But the thing about truth is, we can't kill it. Objective truth is that which does not require a subject's allegiance or agreement to be true. 2 + 2 will always equal 4. A triangle will always have 3 sides. If it had any more or any less, it would not be a triangle. If truth is so short, then why does it seem like truth is fading? Because just as we don't deserve grace, we don't desire truth. If objective truth exists, it does, we must conform to it. It cannot conform to us, which in our hyper-individualistic culture is displeasing. Yet to say there is no such thing as objective truth is, in fact, an objective truth statement. In the epilogue of Fyodor Dostoevsky's Crime and Punishment, which many of us seniors read with Miss Savage in her AP Lit class, the protagonist, Raskolnikov, has a dream of a horrible plague that infects Europe. In this plague, everyone is struck with madness. To quote, "But never, ever had people thought themselves as intelligent and as certain of the truth as those who had been infected. Never had they considered their verdicts, their scientific conclusions, their moral convictions and beliefs more unshakable. And the consequence of this was violence and destruction. No one knew whom to bring to justice and how. They couldn't agree on what was bad and what was good, whom to charge and whom to acquit. People were killing one another out of meaningless spite. Every man had his own ideas, his own solution, and agreement was impossible." Sounds familiar? Dostoevsky's work is from the 1860s. And yet, he sees so prophetically the world we live in now. Many say we live in a post-truth world, where every idea and feeling is given the weight of truth. Not objective truth, but my truth. If the only truth is my truth, then there is no capital T truth at all, and we are beginning to fulfill Dostoevsky's prophecy. If truth is destroyed and dead, then death and destruction are the only truth. It's almost like someone is asking us, don't you know truth is a dead language? So, how do we as Pacificans answer the question that our culture has asked us? With grace and truth, not grace or truth. Why do we see those two words together under our school's crest? We see it everywhere. Why aren't they separate? Though they exist independently, together they are essential. They complete one another and become insufficient in use when they are apart. To use an analogy, truth is like a rock. It is tough, durable, constant, and strong, yet it has jagged edges. If I were to give someone this rock with its coarse texture and its sharp corners, it may cut them. They may not want to hold it. They may reject this rock, no matter how real or valuable it is. Yet, grace polishes the rock and turns it into a smooth stone. So, then when I place the stone in another's hand, it is smooth and comfortable to hold. Grace makes truth palatable. This does not mean that grace waters down truth. No, it means grace provides the time, the place, and the proper delivery for truth. We have seen how truth, or what we believe is truth, without grace creates division. We've seen this in the news and on social media, and even sometimes in our own conversations. We've seen how telling someone the truth without grace just leads to more division between you and them. I do not want to say this. I want to say that this does not mean every idea should be treated equally. That is why we have grace and truth. Every idea must be scrutinized and challenged through a lens of truth. This is what we have done in Mr. McCulloch and Freeborn's classes. Every idea does not have equal value, but every person does. This is objectively true, because God has made us all in his image. Grace matters. Truth matters. We must live in them together as we leave Pacifica and find our path forward, because our education has not saved us from this moment, but saved us for this moment. Grace and truth together cannot merely be learned, but must be lived. We have the tools to make a difference in a broken world, to heal the sick. We can begin to write a new story. In most stories, movies, and books, we have light and we have darkness as the two paths the characters must walk. The Sith, the Jedi, the Fellowship of the Rings, and the army of Sauron, Dumbledore's army, and the Death Eaters. The list goes on. Our preconceptions of light and darkness because of these stories is that to seek the light, we must ascend. And to get lost in the darkness, we must descend. But there are other characters that walk the paths of light and darkness in a different way than most of us think. They ascend into darkness and descend into light. They ascend into darkness and descend into light. We read about them in Mrs. Savage's classes. Two characters from completely different stories. Macbeth and the aforementioned Raskolnikov. Atop Dunsinane Hill, Macbeth watched as the wood of Burnham Forest moved up to his bastion. And at his height, he was too blinded by the darkness of his pride and lust for power to clearly see his own doom was coming up that hill, just as prophesied. When we build ourselves up, when we make our dreams and desires idols, we build a faulty scaffolding into the dark clouds. Macbeth started with all of the potential in the world to be a great man and to be king. But he tried to get it selfishly, and he only climbed into his doom. For when we have ascended into the darkness, we are too blind to see the ground, the solid and stable earth. We are at the mercy of the winds, and we crumble like the Tower of Babel. Yet there is another story. There's another way. The story of Raskolnikov from Crime and Punishment. The young man who lived up in his dark, cramped, squalid apartment in dirty conditions of home and mind, he ascended stairs into another dark apartment and committed a brutal murder, one purely out of pride. He started from a great height of darkness, where he could not see his wrongs. But slowly, with the love and grace of others, he began to descend into the light. He began to descend until he kissed the firm earth, proclaimed his sins to the world, hugged the feet of the woman who led into the light, and wept. Finally, on the day that Jesus was crucified, he ascended up the hill into the darkness of the hill called Golgotha, the hill of the skull. Atop that hill, the weight of the darkness, the weight of our sins, crushed him and killed him. 3 days later, his light poured forth out of a tomb in which he was buried in. Once again, like his birth, Jesus re-entered our world from a low place filled with light. In the words of our Savior, the wise man built his house upon the rock, upon the firm, down, grounded earth. Safe. He is that teacher who shows us that new life. Et nunc scimus antichristo vanitas vita erat, sed post Christo pulcher vita est. Dicit Jesus, ego sum via et veritas et vita. Nemo venit ad patrem nisi per me. translate. And now we know, before Christ, life was meaningless. But after Christ, life is beautiful. Thus spoke Jesus, I am the way, the truth, and the life. Nobody comes to the Father except through me. This is a rock we can all stand on together. Now, like all stories, ours together comes to a close. We've laughed, we've wept, we've won, we've lost, we've grown up together. As we finish this final page in the last chapter of our lives with one another, let us be thankful that at Pacifica we have been shown grace and we have heard the truth and learned how to discern it. Let us never forget what we have been taught at Pacifica. We were not taught what to think. We were taught how to think. And I believe that we will continue to think and live well. Class of 2022, congratulations, and let us now be humble lights in a dark world. Thank you.